Funding for the production of Folks is provided in part by the Friends of LPB.
Up front today, a look at a group of senior citizens who are telling doctors and hospitals to cut the costs but keep the care. In our one-to-one segment, Genevieve Stewart talks to Sibal Taylor, a leading force in Louisiana's labor movement. We'll then tell you about a Baton Rouge cemetery rich with history and some ongoing efforts to restore it. Hello everyone, I'm Rob Hinton, and we'll have those stories today on Folks.
Everybody says folks, just plain old folks. Everybody just people all over the world. Folks who live, folks got to give, folks got to care, folks got to share. Our world is small, so very small. What touches one of us, who touches us all? To stay alive, just to survive, folks got to be in harmony. Everybody just folks, just plain old folks, just plain old folks. Everybody just folks, everybody just folks, just plain old folks, just plain old folks. Everybody just folks.
Hello again and welcome to Folks. If you have required any kind of medical attention in recent years, I'm sure you're all too familiar with the rising costs of health care. Well, up front today, we're going to tell you about a group of senior citizens who think health care costs are just out of control, and they have put together a major campaign aimed at curbing it. The group is the American Association of Retired Persons, and it says that unless steps are taken to curb rising health care costs, quality care will soon only be available to the wealthy. And many senior citizens agree.
It is very high. And when it comes to going, if I have to go into the hospital, I yet don't know what I'm going to do. I really do not know what I'm going to do. I have gone to the Earl K. Long several times for myself. And what the future will bring, I don't know.
It looked like it done got out of reason for the elder people, that when they go to the doctor is high. They go to the drugstore, he's high. They go to the hospital, he done got out of reason. I can't understand what the poor people gonna do. And all of it done got out of reason. It's not on a level like it should be.
People need operations and things, and they put them off because it costs so much to get in the hospital. You have to pay that first $300-something, and then the doctors all charge you about twice what Medicare, so it only pays about half of the doctor bills. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. It's keeping a lot of people from having treatments and operations and necessary things that would have them if it didn't cost so much.
Do you have any personal experiences as far as health costs that you might be able to relate to us?
Several, yeah. Yeah, I was in the hospital in Mobile recently. I was traveling and I got struck down in Mobile with a bleeding ulcer I didn't even know I had, and I stayed 3 days over there and it cost me $1,700.
The AARP has put together a campaign aimed at making health care costs more affordable for everyone. The theme of the campaign is to cut the costs and keep the care.
The campaign has 5 basic goals. First, we hope to reduce the rate of cost escalation in health care, to save and strengthen the Medicare and Medicaid programs, to promote the development of alternate health care delivery systems, to encourage all Americans to adopt and practice a more healthy lifestyle, and to increase the availability of consumer information on health.
The AARP says there is a cure to rising health care costs. The group calls it a political remedy.
The Louisiana State Legislative Committee is an active participant in the legislative process. The State Legislative Committee proposes or drafts legislation, advocates its passage and enactment, and monitors its implementation. Health care costs crisis is a threat to young and old. What we must do is voice our opinions. Your health care costs and that of all Americans will be in jeopardy unless soaring health care costs are quickly brought under control. Our federal and state legislators will soon be making critical decisions on this issue. We must contact them and urge them to support a strong health care cost program that will limit the exorbitant rate of increase in prices which hospitals and physicians charge. Oppose cuts in Medicare and private health insurance benefits, and oppose any further increases in workers' taxes.
Clayton Graves of the Louisiana AARP explains how the group is going to conduct its campaign.
The immediate objectives are to recruit local coordinators in each of the larger cities in Louisiana, such as Shreveport, Monroe, Alexander, Lake Charles, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. And I'm happy to tell you that through the efforts and cooperation of many people, we have located and recruited local coordinators in all but one of those major cities. Then we will go over these programs, and the date has already been set for this, with plans and explanation so that they will be able to go back and enforce the program or implement the program in their own communities. They will also be enrolling local people who will help them in the various communities with either one or more of the programs according to what they need and according to what they would like to put on in that community. And it has been mentioned before here today, political action is very important. It can help solve the health program. As was stated, 10 states have already enacted some similar health program. And there has been a substantial decrease in the cost of health care in those 10 states. On the national level, we have a bill that AARP supports 100%, introduced by Congressman Gephardt from Missouri and Senator Kennedy. It will strengthen Medicare and reduce the escalating costs. We are also supporting that bill.
In addition to the political remedy, the AARP is urging older Americans to take a look at their lifestyles. Good health habits, says the association, can reduce health care costs. And the AARP urges all senior citizens to develop a healthy exercise routine. Now, the cost of health care is a matter we should all be concerned about, not just the elderly. It's time now for our one-to-one segment, and today it features the highest-ranking woman in Louisiana's labor movement. Now, she likes to stay pretty much behind the scenes, so far behind that you probably don't even know her by name. Well, here's Genevieve Stewart here to tell us who this woman is.
Rob, it's Sibal Taylor. Sibal is assistant to the president of the Louisiana AFL-CIO. Sibal is really a woman's woman, very active in the feminist movement. But she could also be considered a man's man by holding her own in the male-dominated world of smoke-filled political cloakrooms and the down-to-earth atmosphere of labor negotiations. As a registered lobbyist, she says that at first, many male politicians did not take her seriously.
Initially, I don't believe anyone took me serious, because when I used to go to the legislators, they'd listen to me, but then they said, well, tell Vic come back here, you know. And after I got a little tired of that, you know, I took Vic Busey by the hand and I said, now you tell him when I talk for labor. And he's so informed. So now when I come, you know, they respect my opinion. They listen to me very attentively, and they normally, you know, are guided by what I say.
Some detractors would say that you were a black woman in the right place at the right time to receive a token appointment with the AFL-CIO. Would such a statement hurt you, make you angry, or merely amuse you?
It would not hurt or amuse or make me angry, because to an extent, they're absolutely right. I was a post-war baby, and I came up during the civil rights era. That's how I got into AT&T, you know, because of 1965 legislation. And to that extent, I do feel I'm lucky, because I'm lucky to have been born, you know, in that period of time. But I tell everyone, I was lucky enough to get there. I'm smart enough to stay there, and that's why I'm here.
Has the labor movement outlived its usefulness?
In my opinion, no. I'm going to tell you why. As long as we're in a capitalistic society, you understand that profit is the motive in capitalism. Not only profit, but maximum profit. And when that occurs, you understand that business owners will exploit me and you and everyone. And when workers feel that exploitation, they will immediately try to organize and to come together in order to secure some of the profits or benefits that they have, in essence, created. And as long as that exists, there will always be a need for unions.
Black women seem to be receiving more attention in recent years, both concerning their problems and their achievements. What is your greatest concern about black women?
My greatest concern is that I think the pressure they're feeling, you know, not only the family structure, you know, that they're breadwinner, they're career person, they're responsible for the family, the moral setting, you know, besides the job pressures, because we feel the same pressures now that men did, because we are moving up in the business world. But besides that, you know, the thing that we also feel that quite often we're pitted, black women against black men. You know, we're made to believe we're taking their jobs. We're made to believe that perhaps, you know, if we weren't there, someone else, a man, would have it, as though we did not have families. You know, and I often think that women are really bogged down by that, and consequently they stay in the background, you know, not to have that conflict, that confrontation. And that concerns me, because until we come to the front and be very forceful and very aggressive, you know, and make not only black men, but everyone understand that we're not here for the fun of it. We're here for the same reasons everyone else is, because we have to. We, you know, 6 out of every 10 of us head a household. You know, we're the breadwinner. And we have to provide a living for our family and for our children just as everyone else. You know, we have to be concerned about social and economic issues just like everyone else, because they affect us very directly now. You know, and that's my greatest fear, that women, I think, sometimes take a background position so that they don't meet with that confrontation or have to explain their presence in the business world or in the economic world. And you don't have to explain. You have a right to be there. You've earned it, you've worked your way there, and you belong there.
Do you intimidate men?
I hope not. I really hope not. I don't do it intentionally if I do it. As a matter of fact, you know, in some instances I can remember very clearly, you know, maybe sometime pretending I didn't know as much as I did. Now, some say that's manipulative. I don't know. Some say it's intimidation. I don't know, but I try not to be.
Is the future of civil rights bright or bleak?
That depends on a presidential election, in my opinion. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. You know, it could be very, very bleak. The 2 candidates running, in my opinion, is not really the issue. The Supreme Court is the issue. And for us, that, you know, depending on the candidate that wins, could be very, very bleak. Clearly, the Supreme Court is the body that sets the law of the land. Up to this point, we've been able to make tremendous gains because of that body. Right now, there's 2 persons on that body that perhaps will retire, depending on what candidate is elected. You know, the president. We could seriously be in for some serious troubles. You know, everyone thinks public education is constitutional, it's legislative. You know, the legislature give it, and it can take it away. You know, we think of affirmative action, it's here to stay. Not necessarily, Genevieve. You know, the legislature give it, and it can take it away. And depending on who that Supreme Court, you know, who sits on that Supreme Court body, realistically, I mean, our entire lives could be set back for years and years and years. And yes, that concerns me, and I think all minorities need to be concerned about that. And that's why I say, depending on who win that race, it could be very bleak.
In a speech, you in essence stated that unless minorities, meaning blacks, women, are on their toes, the fine letter of the laws that were passed to help us can be used against us. Would you expand or explain?
Because so many laws have been passed in recent years that very few people know anything about. You know, the one about identification, I believe, is one we alluded to earlier, where I believe it was in the mayoral race in New Orleans when Dutch Muriel was running in a runoff race, and he got something like 8,000 young 18-year-old kids to go down and register. He took them right from the school to the registrar's office. Immediately after the very next session, what they did, they changed and said you had to have 3 or 4 pieces of identification. There was only 30 days now between the primary and general election. You know, and a lot of people thought that was good, but that was not made, you know, to help. It was made to hurt, and you have to be very careful about that. You know, affirmative action, when you talk about the minority, at one time it was very clear and distinct that black people was minority. But of course, when a lot of federal dollars came in, they redefined the word minority, and it included Asian Americans, it included women, it included everyone. So, you know, you do have to be very, very careful, because that, what is proposed to help you, will be the same pieces of legislation in the future will hurt you if you're not ultra careful.
One often hears the name Sibal Taylor mentioned in connection with getting things done. You have been very active in the civic community, sitting on boards of directors in various advisory capacities, yet you've received very little attention and very little reward for what you've done. Why?
Because I'm a background person, and I like it that way. You know, everyone say, well, Sibal, you know, why you don't run for representative, or why you don't run for something? And my simple statement is, I'd rather be a kingmaker than a king. Everybody shoots at the king. You know, I'm a background person, and I'm a very effective background person, and I like it that way. It is more important to me to get something done rather than to get the limelight, you know, for getting it done. And I think as long as I can take care of business and, you know, get things done, I'm happy. It doesn't matter whether anyone knows it.
Occasionally, Sibal Taylor takes a seat in the forefront, such as chairing 2 statewide advisory boards on drug abuse and family planning, or as chairing the Louisiana delegation to the International Women's Year Conference in Mexico, and as president of the Women's Resource Center. Sibal did share with us 2 other little-known accomplishments that had a decided impact on many lives.
Well, I guess the first thing I'm most proud of, in 1979, I headed a statewide voter registration drive, and within a 6-week period, I put something like 37,000 black folk on a roll, and I was very proud of that. You know, I felt that made a definite impact. In my early years of lobbying, I worked in the Criminal Justice Committee, and there was a couple of bills that, when they were trying to do the recodification of the juvenile code, there was a couple of bills that said kids that played hooky from school would be fingerprinted and mugged and possibly could be held for 72 hours without notifying the parents. And for quite a few years, I was able to delay that piece of legislation becoming law. I say no one knew I did it, but I felt very good about it, because I figure every mother that had a male child from age 10 to 35, I perhaps saved her kid a police record in some sort of way. And I felt very good about that.
As you speak of the black woman, much as you speak of the labor movement, there is an emotionality there, seemingly a very strong feeling of kinship.
Definitely.
Why?
Let me tell you, you know, I didn't enter the labor movement by chance. It was definitely by choice. You know, as I said, I came in during the civil rights era, and during the marches and the sit-in, my mother was a little afraid, you know, so I was not allowed to participate. But I saw the labor movement as a method, a road for me to contribute, because it's not really about social issues at all. It's about economic issues. You know, as it's been said before, what sense does it make for you and I to be able to go to the Hilton if we don't make enough money to pay the bill? We've been excluded. So it's really all about, you know, economic issues. You name something, and I can break it down to the money for you. You know, and I feel that when I can make inroads, when I can beat on that statue of society and crack it to let others in, you know, I've made a serious contribution. And in terms of the black woman, you know, I just feel that the pressures we do feel are so hard and so severe that we need some of us to be able to get to the forefront, you know, and pick up whatever it is that we need to move on, because most of us do not have the time. Not that we don't want to, not that we're not interested, as some would have you believe. But we are interested, and we do want to, but we're busy about survival. You know, how can I come down to the legislature and lobby on issues that I know would benefit me if I have to work at a job 8 to 5 to earn a living, to put bread on the table? You know, how can I, in the afternoons, go down to a public meeting, you know, when I have to come home and see that the babies have done their homework, to see that they have dinner on the table, to see that they've taken their little baths? You know, but quickly they'd say, she's not interested. You know, you never can reach, she never attends the meeting. You know, she doesn't know what's going on. That's not the case. And I think it's a myth that we need to just eliminate. It's not that we're not interested, but we are interested in surviving. We're interested in that kid having shoes on his feet. We're interested in him getting the right, proper moral setting. And that has to take priority sometime over public interests, you know, family first. And I think it's very important. And, you know, I guess I do get emotional about it because I am a black woman, you know, and I am a single parent, and I understand the pressures that she bears.
Even though she prefers to be anonymous, Sibal Taylor has had an impact on many lives.
Last winter, we told you about a cemetery in New Orleans rich with black history. Today, we're going to tell you about a Baton Rouge cemetery also rich in history and some ongoing efforts to restore it.
Sweet Holly is about 150 years old, and some 50 years ago, they commenced using vaults. Before that, they were burying people in the ground, in the coffins, as we sometimes refer to them, in the caskets, or in boxes. And as I said, some 50 years ago, they started using vaults. But I'm sure they have about 150,000 people more buried here because they kept burying people on top of one another over a period of years. You may not be familiar with the number societies, but they were organized through churches, serving as a benefit plan for black people. Well, you had no hospitalization and all that sort of a thing, and so they had to pool their money, and they paid in so much per month for medical, not hospitalization, but for burials, and a little benefit to the surviving relatives. The Benevolent Society has attempted to maintain these two cemeteries, but in later years they didn't have enough strength to do so. My wife and I became highly disturbed about the deplorable condition of the cemeteries, and we decided to ask relatives to come together for the purpose of making some improvement here in the cemetery. The relatives used to come out and with a hoe and a rake and swing blade or whatever and clean around their little plot. But the rest of the cemetery was filled with weeds, briars, you name it. They hardly could get through to get to their particular grave site. We were able to get some money through the council, from the federal government, the community development plan, and we were able to clear out some 20 trees, and we, as you see here, we were able to build a fence all the way around the cemetery and build some 5 sets of concrete steps, and because of that, the cemetery has been somewhat restored.
Can you tell me about some of the notable people who are buried here?
The Reverend Dr. William Taylor, he served as pastor of the Mount Zion First Baptist Church for well over 30 years. I know, should be 35 or possibly 40 years. And you have a Mrs. Ada Catherine Pollock, who was the principal of the Blunden School. She died in 1917. She was a very dedicated white lady whose home was in New York, and she served well. At that time, we had no schools of any worth. Of course, we were holding schools in churches and that sort of a thing, but many of the outstanding citizens got their early education at Blunden School. Trying to get help from the city to put a 24-inch sewage pipe in that ditch across the way. Here's on America Street. We will haul in dirt, bank it, and plant control grass. We'd like to see all the vaults straightened up, leveled. We'd like to paint all the vaults here. Takes money, of course. And we will be appealing, and we're appealing to the public now for some assistance. We'd like to have volunteers to come in and help us to collect money to divine the trees. We'd like to prune the trees. As a matter of fact, we'd like to do a better job of maintaining this cemetery.
Well, that's our program for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Next week on Folks, Genevieve travels to Breaux Bridge to talk to some French-speaking blacks, and I'll be talking one-to-one with Boogaloo Cooper, our candidate for the United States Senate. Be sure to join us next week. Bye-bye.
Everybody's just folks, just plain old folks. Everybody just people.
Funding for the production of Folks is provided in part by the Friends of LPB.